Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Crash Course. I'm not your host, John Green, but I'm Donovan Bullock. And today, you already know what we're talking about. Just look at the title below, the 13 Colonies.
Do 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 down down down.
When first talking about the 13 colonies, you got to start with the beginning, which are the southern colonies. And the first southern colonies were Roanoke and Jamestown. As many of you know, the colonists in Roanoke in 1587 all mysteriously disappeared, leaving Jamestown the first permanent settlement in Virginia in 1607.
Yes, very mysterious indeed.
That brings me to the political structure of the southern colonies. Southern colonies started as proprietary colonies. They were created with different charters, and different governors split up different land for different people. Then they switched to royal colonies. Although Virginia was governed by its own House of Burgesses.
I'll tell you one thing, that guy sure did have a fancy red coat.
Now on to religion. The southern colonies were mostly Anglican and Protestant. Like all colonies, the southern colonies had at least one safe haven for people for religious tolerance. And that safe haven was Maryland, where you had people like Catholics that could worship freely. Donovan, what about the other colonies? And other Donovan over there, I'll get to answering your question. And that brings us to our middle and northern colonies. The middle and northern colonies started from Pennsylvania and went all the way to New York. And Pennsylvania was owned by William Penn, a famous Quaker.
I must say, that hat is fresh. Respect the drip, man. Respect the drip.
The middle colonies, like the southern colonies, were proprietary colonies. And like the southern colonies as well, they transitioned down to royal colonies. The middle colonies were ruled mostly by the elite and pretty rich Quaker families in the area. And that brings me on to Quakers. The Quakers in the area, they were very, very tolerant of other religions. They were against war and against slavery. The New England colonies were Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and last but not least, Massachusetts. Now moving on to the religion in the New England colonies. And the New England colonies' religion was very, very strict. There was no separation between church and state. So basically, when I'm talking about the religion and the politics of the New England colonies, their religion and their politics were seamlessly put together. There was, like I said, there was no separation through church and state. So the heads of the church and the heads of the political scene were basically one and the same thing. And they looked at themselves as the city upon a hill, meaning that all the rest of the colonies were looking up to them. And we had people that got kicked out of the New
England colonies in places like
Massachusetts, kicked out people like Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. So people like Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams spoke out against the church. And being the church themselves, thinking themselves as upon a hill and above the rest, they didn't like people like Roger Williams speaking out. But Anne Hutchinson, being a woman, first of all, and speaking out, that basically was a double whammy. So she was kicked out immediately. But that wasn't the end for our old girl, Anne Hutchinson. She basically took herself and her ideals against the church and basically formed it into her own little colony. So people like Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson basically moved to places like Rhode Island away from colonies like Massachusetts. Back what I was saying on the cult of domesticity. That's basically like the cycle of just badness and not good things for women. So women could either do these three things. They could either cook, they could clean, and making babies is the only thing that they could do. So basically, like, you had these wives and these women of these early colonist men. It was a high patriarchal society, meaning the men was on top. And all the women were left to do is just be there by themselves and cooking and cleaning and basically doing simple housework. And people like Anne Hutchinson that spoke up were looked on and despised upon in most colonies and kicked out. Now talking about the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact was basically a part of Plymouth Rock, and it was the first direct democracy of the United States. And that brings me down to the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut were the first written constitutions in the colonies. Now to talk about everybody's favorite part, the money. Now we're going to first start by talking about what we first talked about today, the southern colonies. So how do people in the southern colonies make money? Well, according to my notes, it said most people were farmers and came to America to get rich. But they had flat land and fertile soil and hot and dry climates and swampy land. So they specialized in cash crops, which led to the rise of tobacco and indigo and with all these indigo grown crops and all these tobacco crops and all these, cash crops led to the rise of plantations. And when plantations, that came one thing, indentured servants and sadly, slavery. And that brings me on to my middle colonies. So how did those middle colonies make money? So basically the middle colonies had very fertile soil and large rivers led to things like subsistence farming, which meaning farming to survive, and those yummy bread baskets that they. In the middle colonies, you had things like the fur trade. And the fur trade boomed and gave lots of wealth and profit to the middle colonies. That moves me on to my New England colonies. And looking at my notes, we can see that the New England colonies, they had very thick and rocky soil, and it wasn't ideal for farming. So that led them to things like manufacturing, and they had a manufacturing-based economy and boom. And that led to things like the lumber industry used for homes, shipping and building, exporting back to things to England, and that actually helped start the Atlantic slave trade and to great for profits. And yeah, that's been the 13 Colonies Crash Course video with your host, Donovan Bullock. I hope you had a good time. I hope you had a snack, grabbed a few seeds, capped a couple laughs, had a great time. It's been fun, and I'll catch you next time. Make sure to subscribe, comment, and share the video. And have a great day. It's been your boy, Donnie D, and I'm out.